Welcome to Legal Keys, unlocking time, revenue, and results. The podcast that connects you with the people, technologies, and trending topics shaping the modern legal landscape. From cutting-edge AI innovations to high-growth marketing strategies and everything in between. Legal Keys is your go-to resource for actionable insights. Brought to you by Faster Outcomes and hosted by Tim Sawyer, two-time Inc. 500 co-founder entrepreneur. We're here to help you navigate the tools and trends driving success in today's legal world.
Well, welcome to Legal Keys. It's great to be here today. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. If this is your first time, we appreciate you popping in. And if you've been here before, we appreciate the support and ask you to continue to like and share the podcast, which allows us to grow, provide great content to more and more people every day. This is our 6th episode, and they get incrementally better. And as Tom Brady loves to say, when asked, what is your favorite Super Bowl win? He always says, the next one. Well, what's my favorite podcast, Legal Keys podcast? This one. And my guest is amazing. I can't wait to introduce him to you guys. We continue to find the most interesting and knowledgeable legal tech professionals, and today is no different. Mark Stiles is a veteran attorney, entrepreneur, and the founder of Stiles Law in Marshfield, Massachusetts. Since 1996, he's built a practice focused not only on real estate and estate planning, but also connecting people to the right legal professionals. And I can't wait to talk to you about his transition. Mark's passion for mentorship, entrepreneurship, and community service is reflected in his work and in his podcast, Elements of Stiles, where he dives into conversations on personal growth, leadership, and living with purpose. Mark has since transitioned to an attorney referral model, where he introduces the consumer of legal services to the right attorney at the right time, saving the consumer time, energy, and money, while allowing the attorney to focus on what they are passionate about, not just what they have to do. And the reason why I'm so happy to have Mark on is we are very much aligned in our philosophy. Anytime somebody asks me what I do, I say my main passion is to give lawyers more time to do what they love. If that's smash their competition, great. If that's get home a little earlier to help put the kids to bed, that is an equally noble goal. And we try to help with both. And I think that's what's going to make for a really cool conversation. That being said, Mark, introduce yourself. Let us get to know you a little bit better and talk about the network.
I love it. Well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me on to your podcast. I'm really excited to share. I've been doing this for a very long time. I've been practicing law for a very long time, doing various different practices, and realized that, one size does not fit all. One size fits one, and that is for the attorney as well. And throughout my career, I noticed a lot of attorneys who were stuck. They were stuck on the wheel, right? So whether or not they found themselves in a law firm that specialized in a certain practice area, and they found themselves, this is all that they do, and this is all that they know, and they got good at it, but they never really liked it. And I thought long and hard about that. A lot of what I did to drive business to my law firm, Stiles Law, was to reach out to the consumer. We were doing that through radio shows, podcasts, and YouTube channel. It was a kind of an Ask Mark model on the YouTube channel, top of the funnel, if you will, reaching directly to the consumer and giving them the answers to the questions that they had, those most frequently asked questions. And then realized I really enjoy that. I really enjoy that consumer advocacy, that reaching to the consumer and pulling the curtain back and showing them, what is behind that curtain? What are the processes? What are the answers? How do we find the right people? And at the same time, creating that marketplace that allows those attorneys to do what they're passionate about, right? Rather than what they have to do. They wake up in the morning grateful to get to do, and what they want to do passionately is help the consumer of legal services in whatever field it is, whether it's estate planning, personal injury, criminal defense, real estate, what have you. And I want to place those people with the right attorney at the right time, those passionate attorneys, those that are not simply taking on the business because they need to make payroll, but
Yeah.
they're fulfilling their dreams and missions of helping the consumers in a passion-based practice.
That is a very noble goal. And a couple things that I want to talk about, probably what not what you're thinking I was going to ask you about. One of the things though that I've noticed, and I've had a couple conversations today with really smart lawyers who found a way to um, derive energy from the law plus, right? Meaning they're lawyers, but there's something else. And in you, it's creativity, right? You have a creative aspect of you, and it feels like that was getting stifled a little bit in the day-to-day grind of being a lawyer. So before we get into efficiencies and technologies, this seems to be a theme I hear a lot. And how do you, what advice would you give to somebody who's in that spot that you were in a bit ago, right? Where you're practicing law, you pay your bills, it's not great, and you're just kind of going through, and at some point in life, you just accept, this is okay, and you do it forever, which is probably the vast majority, right? How do you shock somebody, right? I'm sure you do some counseling, coaching, and motivation. Like, what can you say to them to get them to stop for a second and go, maybe there's a better way or another way?
Yeah, you bring up a very, very valid point. So at the core, I think I'm a creative, as they say, right? So a lot of times, as I zipped up the suit, I felt as though the suit might not fit appropriately, right? I should be doing more of the marketing and the creative things versus the granular day-to-day legal work.
Yeah,
Um, to the creatives, you can do both, right? There's a way to do both, and it's a healthy balance. And for me, it was the marketing. It was always looking around the corner, what's next? How can we stay a step ahead of the rest of the attorneys who are doing what we do?
yeah,
I don't like to refer to them as competitors. I always say collaborators win and
yeah,
competitors lose. But is there a way, right? Can you actually have fun as a creator while doing the practice? And you can to a certain extent. For me, there was definitely an imbalance, right? So I chose the path of going creation and doing all of those things and going all in. And at the same time, helping those attorneys who are stuck doing things that they don't want to do. So maybe they're doing two types of practices and they wish they were only doing one. How do I help feed them those clients by setting up a not warm, but a really hot lead, right? A hot
yeah,
referral of someone who I've already vetted out, who I've already quoted the fee and the retainer and all of the things and set expectations. For example, we have a attorney that we love to refer land use matters
yeah,
to.
yeah,
However, he never calls people back, and it's real. And I joke
yeah,
with him about it, but the reality of it is I need to set expectations for that consumer.
right.
And what I tell them is no matter what, make sure his secretary, his support system is on every email and
Yeah,
don't expect him to call you back. You're getting the best and he will fulfill and do all of the things that you need, but nothing is a 911.
right.
Nothing will get him to call you back. So don't expect him to call you
Interesting.
back. And they'll take a step back and think, wait a second, do I want this person? And the
Yeah,
reality is, yes, you do. Just understand he's not going to call you back
right.
unless he really, really needs to talk to you about something. And it works, right?
Yeah,
Because that way I'm not referring someone who's going to call him every
right,
day expecting a call back. The
right.
expectation has been set. But he
So let's look.
loves doing that. He loves the land
Yeah,
use. But with land use, you have to dig in and you have to be very focused and there can be no distractions. So,
right.
that's what his team is set up to help him with.
So a couple things there. One is now I'm getting, because you kind of read the lines and you go, okay, this makes sense. I saw this, but now I'm getting what you're saying. And going back to kind of separating your creative side from your lawyer side, you're also going a step further or a step deeper, if I will, and say when you say you allow the attorney to focus on what they are passionate about, not what they have to do. So what that guy is passionate about is the law,
Right.
digging in, providing unprecedented, unparalleled service, and don't bug him. Like,
Yeah.
he wants to
Yeah.
do what
Well,
he wants to do. But that guy is dialing in, right? He's like, if you
yeah,
let me do what I'm really freaking good at, and the point is, you did that, right? You said, I'm really good at this. So let me do this, and then I'll let the other people do that. And I think like that's the biggest challenge the average lawyer has, who's they're paying payroll, they got kids, they got life going on. And it's almost like they have to cling to that very narrow mindset of I need to worry, I need to stress, I need to focus on this thing over and over and over again. And the second I allow any of that to go, then it's just there's so much anxiety around that, right? And you've been able to say, well, I'm not really good at that, so I'm gonna let him do that. And then you dial in on connecting people.
that's right.
So I would love for you in all your infinite wisdom to help people tap into how do I let some of that stuff go? Most of the time, it's shit that doesn't even matter, you
Well,
know?
that's the reality of it is, I mean, what is this the saying? I've got a lot of worries and none of it came true. Right. So, it's easy to say it. It's
Yeah,
another thing to practice it, right? Because there are real concerns when you're running a practice, right? You have to generate the income. You have to get back to people. You have to do what is necessary to fulfill. And but what I would stress is if you are really in a situation where you're not enjoying what you're doing, you have to take a step back and you
yeah,
have to, for yourself, because we only get one go at this life. And if you're not doing what you're meant to do, stop,
yeah,
reevaluate, and make a change.
yeah. I think there might be more people are open to that since COVID.
Yeah.
They kind of did some soul searching and said, how much time do I really have? That kind of stuff. And we can have that conversation another day. So I just find that fascinating because I know, and I love the fact that, and I don't want to give anything away, but every email that we communicate, you sign abundantly.
Mm.
And it always makes me stop and think for a second and do a little check like, hey, am I really doing what I want to do in this moment? Right. And I think that's a really neat perspective. Now, let's flip the switch a little bit. You're also a bit of a tech aficionado. We talk a lot about tech on Legal Keys, and one of the things I want to talk a little bit about is the proliferation of AI, right, in all its forms, and specifically, now you have this reputation for connecting the right clients with the right lawyers. Talk a little bit about some of the technology around that. Does AI even play a role in that? And if so, how are you deploying AI in that process?
Well, so I'm deploying AI personally with my phone service. So I took the leap of faith to bring in I call it the AI chat concierge, right? So
Yep.
we disclose it. We're not
Yep.
hiding it. It's very conversational. It could trick somebody
Yep.
because it's that good. However, we want to be fully transparent that this is an AI machine, an agent who
Interesting.
is in essence taking your information, right? So the
Wow.
way we're connecting with the consumer is again top of funnel type of
Yep.
marketing through social media, through radio shows, and podcast. And what we do is we say, reach out, whether it's on the
Yep.
website or through the phone, the same thing is going to happen. You're not going to be transferred to me. You're not going to be transferred to an attorney directly. You're simply going to summarize your needs. And
Yep.
most importantly, how you want to be communicated with. I think that's one of the biggest misses that attorneys have is that they require the consumer to follow their
Right.
process as opposed to the attorney meeting the consumer where they are most comfortable, right? Do you like to
Right.
be communicated by phone? No. Well, then I'm not going to call you. Do you
Right.
love email? Then I'll send you emails. If you enjoy text messages, we can do that as well. So one of the main things we do in our intake is ask that question. What is your preferred mode of communication? And please summarize what your need is. And if it's unclear, then I will personally reach out and ask to summarize or step on a call with what I like to use is Calendly. That's
Yep.
the calendar of choice that I have because what it does is it allows them again to pick a time that works for them, and
Right.
then I'm notified and I call them, and then we figure it out. So what I'm doing is simply sharing experiences, issue spotting, and making introductions. And so right now, what I'm using AI for is for that intake
Yep.
model. I do see it as a scalable model. We'll need AI to do the introductions and to
Yep.
manage the pipeline and the follow-ups and all of that. I'm not currently. However, I'm encouraging attorneys to lean into the AI for their efficiency. So a lot of what I'm doing with this marketplace, if you will, is also helping the attorneys, be more efficient with their business and
Right.
talking with folks like yourself and finding out what the best new models are for attorneys, to lean into that and not be afraid of it. Because one of the things that the law industry suffers with is being laggards,
Right.
and I'm guilty of being an early adopter. So in
Yep.
that field, I get side-eyed a lot because I'm like, no, we need to be doing this. And the attorneys are a little bit slow to adopt for fear of, is it perfect? Right?
Right.
The is it good enough? Yes. Is it perfect? No. So what do we do with that? Well, we
Yeah.
iterate on it, but how can we be more efficient? How can we build better systems? And I find that that's a lot of what I'm doing when I'm helping other attorneys. So I see AI. I don't like the word disrupting because it just is a visual of
Yeah.
chaos and fire and brimstone and all of that. But I see it helping tremendously and making things much more efficient. Now, does the attorney need to review the final version? Of course.
Yeah.
But that's version 3 as opposed to starting at version 1. So I see it
So,
in the practice much more than I do in my model right now.
that's what I was going to say. So what's interesting, I was in Mississippi just a few days ago, Jackson, and doing a CLE talk, and the conversation came up around AI, using AI and intake in the practice, right?
Hmm.
And um, the reaction was like, "Whoa, never, no how, no way would I ever put a consumer on the phone with a bot." And it was a pretty exciting conversation. Some people got animated and started yelling at people, because it makes sense. A lot of law firms do it. They do it very effectively, right? But again, it's one of those. Okay, is the person willing to step out in faith versus fear? Most are not, right? So, but you just said something very profound. You said it's not it's not the end all be all, but it's good enough,
Hmm.
right? So, and if you have human in the middle, someone's taking a look at it. So AI, to the point, we always say this, we don't advocate that AI is going to replace lawyers, although I will say lawyers who are really good with AI are probably going to replace lawyers who aren't. I do think
Yes.
that's true. Um, but they're not, it's right now, we're not at a place where any AI is going to replace a human. But if you can get you 90% of the way, or 80% of the way. And so if you've got 100 of something and now you only have to do 10 of it, you just got 90. Is
Yeah.
that what you're experiencing, right? Probably with
Yeah.
that initial chat. And how do consumers react? Do they go,
Well,
hey,
that's exactly right. With respect to the actual legal practice and the work that needs to be done, the efficiencies of getting to a farther along faster and with less hours, I think is going to benefit the consumer ultimately. And that's what the attorneys need to be aware of is, what is in the best interest of the consumer as opposed to themselves. What I'm realizing with the automated intake, the AI intake, people enjoy it. And I'm finding more and more, the company that I'm working with, they've done a lot of studies that there is a
yeah,
huge percentage of people who don't want to talk with people. Now, it's a scary thing to say. It
true,
seems very antisocial. However,
true,
how much time do we waste
right,
actually talking when all I want to do is I want to get the information that's in my head over to your plate so that you can
right,
help me? Right.
right,
So how do we do that most effectively? Well, we summarize it. Some people like to type it in. Sure, jump on the website and type it in. Some
yeah,
people like to talk it in, and the AI chat concierge will simply send me a typewritten summary of what they
Yeah.
had spoken into the machine, if you will. But the fact that people are not in the fact that people are moving away from talking to other people, although sounds really frightening, is it makes sense with respect
Yeah.
to what I'm saying. Is like, how do I get this information to you without, taking a message and scheduling a
Right.
call and then talking about nonsense for 10 minutes? I want to deliver the information and I
Right.
want to solve the problem that I have. How do I do that?
You're right. And it's kind of like one of those things. Hey, don't shoot the messenger, man. Like this is just what consumers are telling you, right?
Yes.
Even we just had a long conversation with a really cool guy today about the billing model, the billing model of hourly billing and how that's going to be challenged, right? And consumers are going to drive that. And what's interesting, because as I'm listening to you, I would be okay with that if I trusted the source, meaning if it was marketed to me correctly and I believe that these people are going to do the right thing. I don't want to, I just, can you help me
Small
with this?
talk.
I don't want small talk. Hey, can you help me with my estate? Cool. I trust this guy. How's this going to work? People would do it. And I do it myself. Like I'm not shy about entering information or having conversation. I appreciate it because it's way more efficient. And what that speaks to though is I kind of see a world where, to your point, and you talk about this, right? Is how efficiency is good. I see lawyers are going to have to become more efficient with everything,
Mm.
right? Because as lawyers get better and better at using AI, you're going to see new pricing models. You're going to see a lot of things change, and specialization is going to be key, right? Because just like you train a bot, an agent, to be a specialist, and that's what's going to happen is you're going to have a lawyer who's got an employment agent who's a ninja at employment, right? And it's not, well, because Mike knows Mark and Tim knows Steve, and that's how we got here. No, no, this guy's really good at this, and this is the cost. Do you see that being, not to your point, disruptive, but transformational is like just really, really dialing in on efficiencies that you can squeeze out of that.
Yeah. And, people have asked me, do you see lawyers going away? And clearly, no.
No,
And the
no,
law school education, I think, is something that is amazing because it gets you to think correctly. So, how do we translate that? Now that the law student or the young attorney doesn't need to go into the library and spend hours upon hours researching and developing a theory around a specific matter, they become the thinker, the one who says, okay, what is this issue? What are we dealing with? And, have we dealt with this before? And they can prompt that, right? So they become more of a prompt engineer versus a research associate
right,
because the system is going to research it for you, right? And it's
right,
only getting better. Yes, that supervising attorney, that senior attorney will have to review it and make sure that there's no hallucinations or there's no incorrect citations. However, they're doing that anyhow with
right,
the associate attorney, right? They're still responsible for what that young attorney, that novice attorney is delivering to them. They're not just signing it and passing it along anyhow. But
right,
that younger attorney is now gets to step up, right? It's the advent of the calculator, right?
right,
You're able to be more efficient and skip the step of wasted time, right? Is it a useful skill to know how to research? Maybe. It's more useful to understand what the issue actually is. So the consumer
right,
comes to you and says, here's my problem. What do I do? Well, the consumer may think that they have
right,
a certain situation, but when you peel back the onion, it's actually something very different. And that's the legal mind. That's the legal education that creates that issue spotting
right,
ability. And then prompting it into a form of a customized model where they can put in the proper information and get back in fraction of the time that they
right.
would be spending otherwise. And simply stated, that's going to be a benefit to the consumer. And I don't
Huge.
think any attorney is going to miss out on any learning because frankly, it's wasted time. Without the why would you not use the calculator if you had the
Well,
ability?
and if you think about it, right, traditional research is you start wide and then you get smaller and smaller and
Yeah,
smaller and smaller, and then you get here and then you go this way, right? But now, instead of all this, a good prompt writer starts here at the
yeah,
nexus,
yeah.
literally at the nexus of the problem, right? Because he gets there in 2 seconds, and then he can provide all the information that comes out of that very quickly. And there's so many cool implications, not to get distracted around that, but a young lawyer associate, whatever, that's looking at the law, it's a little less sexy, right? It's an aging population, and I see this type of technology as a way to attract more talented folks into legal, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm interviewing, I'm a 22-year-old, 24-year-old by the time you get out of law school, um, and I'm asking questions about using technology in the practice. If that guy's looking at gals looking at me and saying, we are adamantly opposed to the use of any, bam, 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 I'm going to go, yeah, what? I just spent 6 years of my life learning how to use that. My expectation is we're using that, right?
Yeah.
There's going to be tension. I bet you already feel tension, right? That people who are ambitious and trying to use more technology in firms that don't want to do it, they're going to leave, right? That's the way it works.
Yes, there's no question about it. And the smart ones, the innovative ones are adopting, right? It's the old guard, as they say, and they're called the old guard for a reason. They're protectionism, right? They're holding out. They're building up the wall. We've got all the answers, and you have to pay us for those. Well,
Right.
consumers are going to come to the table with a lot more information. I mean, just ask the car sales industry,
Yeah.
what the consumer knowledge is once the internet was
Yeah.
invented. Ask the real estate industry now, who used to hold all the information. They would have the
Yeah.
book at the office, and if you wanted to buy a house, you had to go to them to open up the book to find out what was available.
Right.
Now they're going to the real estate agent saying, "Okay, I need you. I need your
Yeah.
help, but I want these four houses. I want to look
Right.
at these four because I've already done all the research."
Right.
There's no difference now. The consumer of legal services is already doing their research. They're going on YouTube, they're
Right.
going on ChatGPT, and they're asking all of the questions. Are they creating the documents for themselves? They're getting to the step right before that,
Right. Right.
and that means that they're expecting a much smaller invoice at the end because
Yeah.
they've done a lot of the work. So
Interesting.
the attorneys will have to get on board with that, and it will change the landscape of the law because it isn't that these folks can't get the information. They can get all of the information necessary, and a lot of people will take that leap and say, "This is good enough. I'm just going to
Right.
print this out and
Go
use
with
this as the contract."
right. Probably. It's funny because the last thing that I want to wind down, I was just having another conversation with someone. We were talking about this, and I asked him, "Are you seeing more and more people coming to you and saying, 'Hey, I've got this document I think is 90%
Mhm.
there. Can you take a spin through this?'" You know, and he had a pretty good talk track of how he deals with that. And
What'd he say?
what he said was the need to educate that consumer on, okay, you've got a document, and if I used my legal document to a layperson, they might look similar, but an operating agreement that starts legally sound can be dramatically improved, enhanced with AI. But if you're starting from a blank slate with OpenAI or ChatGPT, you have a higher likelihood of having problems that you're not aware of, right? So
Hmm.
his advocacy is, let's start with a document that's proven, we know it works, and then let's bring your unique circumstance to the established document versus let's start from a blank slate, tabula rasa, and go from there. It's an interesting concept. But I have talked to a lot of lawyers who now see way more people coming in and saying, I think I got this. I don't want to pay for the whole thing. And it's got to be brutal, right? Because for the lawyer, it's like, hey, this is what I do for a living, right? And
Yeah.
they got to figure that out, whether it's subscription based or flat fee. Consumers are gonna, they're already doing it, right? They're already
Yep.
saying, yeah, I don't want to.
And some
Instead of,
are
yeah, go ahead.
and some aren't going to the lawyer, right? that's a reality, right? But then what is it? It's, you pay up front or you pay on the other side of it when the document isn't sound. But I think one of the things that lawyers are very skeptical about is the protection of the documents. And I know we've talked, you and I, about um, your proprietary package for personal injury attorneys. It's,
Yeah.
how do you protect all of the information that you're feeding into the engine? And I don't think a lot of lawyers have realized that there is a way to actually have your own custom built AI. They think there's only this open source that if I put this information in, it's going to be searchable, so I can't touch AI.
Right. No, agentic is easy fix on that. And even in secret mode or whatever you want to call it with ChatGPT's newest, they're still learning from the data. They're using that data to learn, even if they quote it's not searchable. You really have to be careful around that.
Yeah.
And the bigger risk is, lawyers saying, how's they gonna possibly? It was funny because I was talking, and we'll wind down on this one. I talked to you all day. I was talking to this lawyer a week ago, and he got really angry. We were doing a CLE talk on ethics, and we get to the end, and he goes, "Do we really need to hear this shit every time?" He's like, "I study more about AI than anybody on the planet, and all they tell me is I can't do this and I can't do that." And he literally said, "This is awesome." He goes, "My average client, do they care if I put their medical information into ChatGPT? No, they don't."
Yikes.
It's like, I don't know if that's the kind of broad statement we want to have on
Yeah.
this recorded Zoom call.
But
They
but
don't
the
care.
but I see a time
You
where
get it, right?
the big law firms, the personal injury, they're already doing it. You've got them on the forefront, on the frontier of creating these moded, if you will,
Yeah,
protected, learning models. But every law firm can do that. They can create their own independent proprietary AI model that, if they're in mergers and acquisition firm and they're using the same documents
yeah.
over and over again,
We
like,
do it every
why
day.
wouldn't you do that, right?
We do it every day.
You're reviewing the same types of contracts, leases, what have you, every day, all day, loan documents every day, all day.
Yeah,
Why wouldn't you make it more efficient, right? For
easy.
you and for the consumer. Now, the lawyers will, push back and say, well, that's going to affect my bottom line. I saw it during COVID, right? A lot of the courtroom lawyers who were
Yeah,
billing by the hour, who could bill from the time they left their house, the 4 hours that they were sitting in court, and then the hour back home, turned into 15-minute Zoom calls. And they're like, I don't even know what to do because my billables just went down 40%.
right.
Well, that wasn't fair to the consumer anyhow. This is
Right.
much more efficient and much more favorable to the consumer. The same thing is happening with AI. Like, why are we spending 5 hours on the same routine documents when we can spend 5 minutes, right? Yeah, we're going to need more clients. Okay, let's go get more
World's going to
clients.
change.
Yeah.
I'll let you go with this. I'm reading this book. I'm not promoting it. It's a really
Yeah.
cool book written by the author of Sapiens, and it's called Nexus. It's the perfect term for this conversation, Nexus. And the description is a brief history of information networks from the Stone Age to AI.
Mm,
And it is a really cool read. I don't know if you ever read Sapiens, but this is the same author. And it's a nexus. We're at that point.
yeah.
And you brought up something so interesting about car dealerships. It's exactly what happened, right? When the guy thought he either knew or thought he knew or actually knew more than the salesperson, and he walked on the lot and said, "I was on kellybluebook.com. This is what I discovered." And then they start fighting,
Yeah.
right? Well, we're gonna have to stop disgracing and start embracing this modern client. This modern client either, and they're the same problem. He either actually knows more or is 100% confident that he knows more than he did 2 years ago.
Yeah.
You can't just say, "I'm just not going to deal with his shit." Like that's not a strategy, man. Like we got to figure that out. And this program, the Legal Keys, it's not about bashing what people are. It's saying, hey, let's work together. Let's bring on
Yeah.
people like Mark to get his ideas out into the public. And how are you dealing with that? You're literally using bots and telling people we're using bots, and they're like, cool. Like,
Yeah.
we're past proof of concept, man.
Yeah.
Like, we're in the
Well, and
field now.
people embrace that, and they
And
appreciate the fact that you're working to make things more efficient for them because they know ultimately it's going to be passed on to them.
yeah, you're right. This was a great conversation. So anyone
Yeah.
listening, I know you've got an amazing podcast. So talk a little bit about your podcast, where folks can find that, where consumers can find you, everything that we need to know about Mark Stiles.
Yeah, so for folks looking to be matched with the right attorney at the right time, saving them as much time, energy, and money as possible, they can go to my website, stiles-law.com. Again, stiles-law.com. And to test out our AI concierge, 781-319-1900, deliver all the information that you want, and I will make that match, which will soon be automated because we've got the abilities to build out that infrastructure that has the fees quoted and all of the things to let you know if this is the right fit, and we'll make that match. The podcast, Elements of Stiles, is a podcast. It's a passion play for me. It gives me life energy. I really enjoy talking to amazing people doing amazing things. We're starting to do a little bit more focus on AI
Yep.
and the legal profession itself. So merging those two things together. So it was really a blessing to be here with you, Tim, workshopping through some of those ideas.
Grateful. This is, like I said, my favorite podcast. The next one, that's today, it's this one. Yes, super grateful. I learned so much from this. Like you said, this is my fuel. It's my oxygen. It's not my primary vocation. Although, if I had a choice, maybe someday it will be.
Yeah,
And
love
and I'll be living abundantly. Well, I
that.
feel pretty good about where I'm at right now. But I'm grateful. Want to thank our listeners for joining us today. Want to give a shout out to our sponsor. This podcast is brought to you by Faster Outcomes. Faster Outcomes is an AI-powered, the ultimate legal intelligence platform for law firms and lawyers of all shapes and sizes. And with that, wish everybody a great week. I want to say thank you to everyone listening. Thank you to Mark. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you, Tim.